Emily dashed from the house, her shaking hands gripping her flimsy coat. The biting wind screamed through the fields, yet she raced toward the barn, undeterred. The heavy darkness enveloped her, with only the faint glow of the lantern outside the barn, a distant beacon urging her forward. She stopped before the heavy wooden door, her heart racing, threatening to explode from her chest. The soft, deliberate sound of hooves echoed, as if the horse awaited her arrival, sensing her presence before she even stepped inside. Emily opened the door, the creak cutting through the heavy silence. Zephyr loomed, powerful and striking, his dark eyes locked onto hers. She took a deep breath and moved cautiously toward the horse. The barn air was thick, each breath and movement laden with an unexplainable weight. "You waited for me, didn't you?" Her voice was a whisper, soft as a confession. Zephyr tilted his head, a small gesture that felt like a response. His gaze held her captive, a deep understanding that rendered Emily motionless, unable to break free. For the first time in years, she felt genuinely seen and heard, unlike ever before with Jacob. An intense wave of emotion swept over her, both soothing and dangerous. Her hand grazed Zephyr's mane, warmth flooding her fingertips. An electric jolt surged through her, and in that instant, she understood her life would never be the same. The wind howled outside, but Emily was oblivious. All else vanished into quiet. It was just her and Zephyr, a growing secret weaving through the shadows, ready to spark. Emily froze in the barn, her hand softly on Zephyr's mane, eyes drifting into the emptiness. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, absorbing the scent of dry hay, damp earth, and the warm breath of the silent horse beside her. In this serene moment, she felt free from the cold, empty house, Jacob's hollow gazes, and the deep loneliness that had consumed her for years. Memories crashed over her, overwhelming and relentless. Once, Emily thought love could overcome all. She and Jacob were once a fierce fire, unyielding and bound together. She recalled their first meeting, how Jacob's wit and charm had her laughing until tears flowed. She remembered the warm evenings by the fire, dreaming of a hopeful future. Jacob once vowed to stand by her, creating a life they would treasure together. Promises turned into a distant luxury over time. Jacob immersed himself in work, with endless meetings and long business trips. Emily couldn't recall the last time they shared a dinner without his phone buzzing constantly. Each time he returned, it felt like welcoming a stranger. He'd enter, toss his bag aside, embrace her briefly, then vanish behind his laptop screen. Emily fought hard to keep her grip. She crafted romantic dinners, attempted to rekindle their old conversations, but Jacob always brushed her off with the same tired words.
"I'm exhausted, Emily.
Can we chat later?" But the moment never arrived. She once thought time would mend all wounds, but it only deepened the divide between them. Jacob had his flaws, but he wasn't a bad man. He wasn't unfaithful, angry, or neglectful in the usual way. His indifference left Emily feeling like she was vanishing, a ghost in her own marriage. When Jacob bought Zephyr, she believed it was merely another passing phase. Yet, Zephyr was the sole spark in Emily's dull existence. In the horse's deep, soulful eyes, she discovered a long-lost piece.
It was more than that.
Emily always remembered the moment she met Charlotte, the horse trainer Jacob had brought in. Charlotte was a powerful woman, her piercing eyes cutting through facades, carrying a quiet sorrow that revealed her own pain. Charlotte's silence was profound, yet her words pierced through, revealing the truths Emily had long evaded. She recalled that afternoon with Charlotte by the barn, discussing Zephyr. Charlotte's gaze pierced through Emily, stripping away every layer of her soul, as she uttered a sentence that would haunt Emily forever. Horses like Zephyr perceive truths that humans often deny. Loneliness can create the deepest connections. Emily smiled politely and dismissed it. Now, standing before Zephyr, Charlotte's words resonated in her mind like a haunting prophecy. She hesitated to admit it, but maybe Charlotte was right all along. Her loneliness, the void Jacob left, pulled her to Zephyr, inch by inch. She gently stroked Zephyr's mane, savoring the warmth beneath her hand. "You know, Zephyr," she whispered, "there are moments I long to be a horse just like you. All is calm, no struggles, just liberation." Zephyr remained silent, yet his eyes conveyed understanding. In that instant, Emily experienced a brief wave of relief.
Deep down, she felt the shift.
There was no turning back. Moonlight spilled over the fields, guiding the way to the barn. Emily moved slowly, each step drawn towards Zephyr by an unseen force. The wind howled, biting and fierce, yet she remained unfazed. Something within her stirred, a storm both unclear and intense, as her heart pushed her toward the unknown. The barn door creaked, hinges groaning in the night. Zephyr stood, shadowy eyes glinting in the moonlight. In that instant, Emily sensed everything around her fade away. Jacob was gone. The cold calls and lonely evenings disappeared. It was just her and Zephyr, a bond so deep it needed no words. "You waited for me again, didn't you?" she whispered, her voice a stolen secret. She moved in, her hand softly gliding over Zephyr's smooth black mane. The horse's warm breath brushed against her, a gentle comfort, a silent promise. She caressed him, her fingers dancing over the silky strands of his coat. Her chest lightened, a rare calm washing over her, almost unfamiliar. But then everything changed. Emily couldn't remember why she acted. It was the way Zephyr's eyes locked onto hers, the subtle tilt of his head that acknowledged her touch. The storm within her raged, loneliness, yearning, an unfillable void. Her hand lingered on his face, warmth radiating from her palm. She shut her eyes, inhaling deeply. Yet that breath quivered.
Zephyr.
His name escaped her lips, a whisper of truth, not a summons. The horse moved, bowing his head in silent acknowledgement. His stillness, rich with understanding, made Emily feel he could read her very thoughts. His gaze locked onto hers, deep and unyielding, pulling her in with an irresistible force. Her breath quickened. She stepped closer, the gap between them a painful void begging to be closed. A heavy silence hung between them, charged with anticipation. Her hand rested on Zephyr's chest, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath her fingers. Yet her heart raced wildly, on the verge of breaking her calm. She ceased all thoughts. For the first time, every reason, every moral thought, and all logic vanished. She faced the rawness of her emotions, a part of her long repressed. A single step, a gentle lean, and Emily's world shattered. She had lost her essence. Emily was reborn, no longer tired and hollow. She was a woman overwhelmed by unfamiliar emotions. A faint noise shattered the moment. Emily recoiled, as though pulled from a haunting nightmare. A faint light cut through the barn, freezing her heart in that moment. Charlotte stood in the doorway, her piercing gaze on Emily, sharp and unyielding. Silence spoke volumes, and Emily understood. Charlotte had witnessed it all. The barn air was icy. Charlotte stood still, her face a blend of shock and icy analysis, as if she were unraveling the moment she had just entered. Emily tried to speak, but silence filled the air. Her breath rose in the cold night air, a silent confession. Shame, guilt, and fear weighed heavily on her, but deep within, a strange relief flickered. She felt the weight lift. Her secret was finally shared.
Emily.
Charlotte's voice shattered the silence, steady yet powerful. "What are you up to?" The question sliced through the silence, sharp and piercing. Charlotte entered the barn, each step deliberate and heavy with intent. Emily stumbled back, but Zephyr remained still, a steadfast anchor in the chaos around her. I'm lost," Emily stuttered, her voice fragile and quaking. Charlotte halted mere feet away, her piercing gaze penetrating Emily's soul. "Do you see where this is going?" Charlotte asked, her voice quiet yet each word struck hard. "Emily, you're risking everything. When it all goes up in flames, there will be nothing to save." Emily was silent. She stood there, facing Charlotte, overwhelmed by a storm of emotions. She realized Charlotte was right. She felt the weight of those words. Yet, despite that knowledge, she couldn't hold back. Not right now. Not after she had crossed a line she believed she never would. Charlotte faced Emily, her eyes piercing and unwavering. The barn's tension closed in on Emily, suffocating her, making each breath a struggle. She faced Charlotte's gaze, unable to escape the truth of what had occurred, and found no words to defend her choices. "Did you honestly believe this would remain hidden, Emily?" Charlotte's voice held firm, laced with simmering fury. "Did you really believe no one would see the change in you, the shift in your eyes each time you leave this barn?" Emily stepped back, gripping Zephyr's mane tightly, her lifeline in a moment of despair. But Zephyr, the horse she once thought understood her completely, now stood in silence. Silence reigns, a stillness that feels alive, an unseen gaze observing from afar. I never intended to," Emily rasped, her voice strained. Her words felt empty. She couldn't deny Charlotte's vision, yet words failed her. An overwhelming emotion swept through her, a whirlwind she couldn't escape. "Wasn't my intention." Charlotte's laugh was brief and biting, laced with bitter irony. "Emily, this isn't an accident. It's a choice, and you know it." Charlotte's words hit Emily hard, igniting a fierce determination within her as she teetered on the brink of change. Her inner storm of shame, anger, and desperate longing surged, ready to explode. "What does it matter to you?" Emily's voice erupted, louder than she meant, nearly a shout. "You can't fathom my struggles. The loneliness is overwhelming." Charlotte's face remained unchanged. "You're right, I don't know everything," Charlotte said, her voice soft yet laden with significance. "You're not just hurting yourself, you're hurting everyone around you." Emily felt vulnerable, laid open. She stood there, caught between Charlotte's icy stare and the eerie silence of Zephyr. All her justifications, all her excuses, now seemed hollow. She was a woman ensnared, overwhelmed by emotions beyond her grasp. Emily whispered, "Lucas will never understand." She averted her gaze, the moonlight spilling through the barn's cracks illuminating her eyes. "He's always been blind to who I am." "No, not at all. Is this really a reason?" Charlotte moved in, closing the gap between them. "Emily, I'm here to support you. You must grasp this. Your actions won't lead to the freedom you believe they will. It will only deepen the pain." Emily felt the urge to shout, to make Charlotte see her truth. How could she ignore the truth in Charlotte's words? How could she deny the truth that she had crossed an irreversible line? A sudden noise shattered the tension, slicing through the silence. Emily froze, her head jerking toward the noise. The car's headlights cut through the night, illuminating the field with a sharp, piercing light. "Lucas." Her heart stopped, and a chill enveloped her, leaving her frozen. Charlotte looked at Emily, her piercing gaze easing just a bit, a fleeting spark of unexpected sympathy in her eyes. "Make your choice, Emily," Charlotte urged, her voice softer yet firm. "In this moment, confront your actions or drown in the chaos." Emily's breath quickened as Lucas's car approached, headlights casting a harsh light on her pale, terrified face. She felt lost, unsure of her next words or actions. Every secret, every buried feeling, was on the edge of being revealed. "Emily," Charlotte insisted one final time, her voice steady and resolute. "This is your moment. Only you can decide." Emily glanced at Charlotte, then Zephyr, before turning to the oncoming headlights. Her mind was chaos, yet her heart beat with undeniable clarity, guiding her through the storm. In that moment, she knew there was no escape. The headlights pierced the darkness, revealing the barn door and etching every detail of Emily's anxious face in sharp relief. She froze, time hanging in the balance. Charlotte stepped back, creating space for Emily, yet she remained. Charlotte's sharp eyes, once cold and unyielding, now radiated a quiet, watchful patience, as if she awaited Emily's final choice. The car halted near the barn. Lucas emerged, his height stretching a shadow beneath the blinding headlights. The car door slammed, silence enveloping everything. He paused, eyes darting around, then stepped toward the barn. "Emily? Are you there?" Lucas called, his voice steady, as it always was. To Emily, it was thunder shattering the quiet night. She faced him, their eyes locked, and in that moment, she understood he held a secret. It might not have been obvious, but deep down he knew. "I couldn't sleep," she said, her voice steady, but the tremor in her breath revealed her struggle. "I wanted to see how Zephyr is doing." Lucas entered the barn, his gaze shifting from Emily to Charlotte, who lingered nearby, quiet and motionless like a shadow. His brows knitted together as he glanced between the two women, sensing the thick tension in the small room. "What's happening?" he asked, curiosity in his voice, eyes searching. Charlotte remained silent. Emily understood she never would. This was her moment to confront the truth, to own what she had fought so hard to hide. All eyes were on her, and she sensed every path converging into one sharp point. She could deceive once more, extending the heavy weight of secrets and guilt. She could finally confront the shame, the pain, and the vulnerability that had haunted her. Her eyes darted to Charlotte, whose calm face masked a fierce challenge. Then to Lucas, whose worried eyes held a flicker of doubt she couldn't overlook. She realized she could no longer escape. "Lucas," she started, her voice heavy with feeling. I have something important to share." Lucas stood still, confusion flickering in his eyes. He stayed still, eyes fixed on hers, silence heavy between them. Charlotte averted her gaze, stepping back to give them space, yet remained in the barn. Emily inhaled sharply, her words caught in her throat. She remembered the moments she lost herself, gazing into Zephyr's eyes, discovering the solace Lucas could never provide. She felt the yearning, the shame, the desperation, and realized that if she remained silent, those emotions would trap her for eternity. "I felt so alone, Lucas," she said, her voice breaking, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I've carried this weight for ages, and I can't find a way out. With you, with us, everything feels meaningless now." Lucas paused, silence hanging heavy. He stood, eyes locked on hers, desperate to uncover the truth hidden in her words. "What do you mean, Emily?" His voice was low, each syllable heavy with meaning. "I've sought solace where I shouldn't," her voice trembling. I feel lost, Lucas. I can't put it into words, but I've gone too far." Lucas recoiled, disbelief flickering in his eyes. He crossed a line, his voice rough, barely a whisper. Emily's heart tightened, gripped by an unseen force. She said, "I can't find the words. I realize I've gone too far, and there's no turning back." She prepared for Lucas's fury, expecting him to shout or walk away.
Yet he chose not to.
He stood there, gazing at her, his expression a whirlwind of feelings she couldn't understand. At last, he spoke, his voice deep and weighty. "Emily, do you still love me?" That question broke through her last defenses. Emily gazed at him, tears flowing uncontrollably. "I'm lost, Lucas. I'm lost. I need to rediscover it. I need to know why we've changed this way." Charlotte stayed quiet, yet Emily sensed her unwavering presence, observing it all. Lucas walked away, leaving the barn in silence. His silhouette vanished in the car's headlights, leaving Emily feeling more hollow than ever. Charlotte drew near, her piercing gaze transformed by an unexpected warmth. "You did the right thing," she said, her voice steady yet soft. Emily remained silent. She faced Zephyr, his dark eyes fixed on her, as if they contained all the answers she desperately sought. She leaned in, her fingers brushing softly through his mane one final time. In that instant, clarity struck her. She had to escape the barn, break free from the shadows that had consumed her for too long. The moon's cold glow lingered as Emily walked away, burdened by pain and regret, yet holding on to a flicker of hope that one day she might rediscover herself.